Okay, welcome everyone to the final roundtable for Better Futures Australia for 2024. We are all joining this call from First Nations land. So I have the privilege to join you from Yagara and Turrbal People's Country in beautiful Meanjin, Brisbane. It's been incredibly rainy here. Haven't had a proper night's sleep, but can't complain for all those parents out there. Um, it's definitely going to be an intense summer. So I hope you all stay safe out there. Um, and yeah, I wish to pay respects to First Nations Australians who've shown massive resilience and knowledge and wisdom in caring for country over the uh, tens to hundreds of thousands of years. And there's the many inspiring lessons generously shared with all of us in the work that we do to share the caring for country and the constant reminder for us the importance of valuing the interconnectedness and the strength that lies in all of us working together to solve a lot of these wicked challenges. So all of you are out there doing awesome work, and we all know 2025 is really shaping up to be a key year for climate progress. We've got the federal election that needs to take place before the 17th of May. We have the UN deadline for the NDC updates on the 10th of February. And we have the Bonn Intersessional in June, where we're expecting an announcement on the potential co-hosting of COP31. But who's to say which way that'll go, depending on what happens before the 17th of May. So with that all in mind, the agenda for today's session, I was hoping William Chan would be here to give a report back from COP29. Quimby, I wonder if you might be able to just give him a quick call and see if he's on his way. But otherwise, we'll jump in, and I've put together just a few slides for all of you to invite some feedback on our plans for next year, and then we'll jump to the updates from each of the awesome sector working group representatives we have on the call to share any advocacy priorities, upcoming events, campaigns, initiatives, or opportunities to collaborate. So I think today we have representatives from the local government, sector working group, transport, nature-based solutions and land use. Monica, if you're happy to chime in for corporate and finance, that would be incredible. And I'm not sure if Kevin from health, but you're very new, and Ray. So if either of you wanted to chime in, you're very welcome to. That would be awesome. Alrighty. So, and then we have just a bit of a call to action to leave you all with, given our launch of the Mission 2025 Australia campaign. So yeah, we'd love your help over the summer to try and draw out some more real economy leaders to add their voice to that ahead of the February 10 deadline. But we'll delve into a little bit more on that shortly. So I'll just share my screen. And please, everyone, do introduce yourselves in the chat if there's people you don't know. It's always helpful to know where people are coming from and connect in on further collaboration opportunities. Okay, so share my screen. Okay. Okay, can everybody see that? Yeah, excellent. Okay, so those of you who are relatively new to the Better Futures Australia community, we are a national coalition, community, alliance, whatever the word choice is, working to represent support and ambition for a Paris-aligned national climate response across all corners of society and the economy. So we have sister alliances globally, including We Are Still in the US, and some sister alliances in South Africa, Japan, Vietnam, and other nations. So we work with global partners through the Global Alliances for Climate Action and also the Race to Zero campaign team with the UN champions. So ahead of COP31, that'll be part of our strategy to see how we can play a role in trying to make some nominations and see who those leading voices are that can work with the COP presidency and the government's organising team to play a role in shaping the dialogues and the public narrative around that as well. So our updated objective, we've made some adjustments given the current settings and heading into an election year. We'll be working with all of you, our awesome partners and sector working groups, and the broader list of supporters that we have to strengthen and accelerate the work underway. So looking at existing campaigns through coalitions like Renew Australia for All and other complementary national initiatives that will feed into a 1.5 aligned NDC and also help prepare the leaders across society and the economy to shape a credible and ambitious COP31. And through all that, supporting the members of Climate Action Network Australia to interact beyond that movement bubble and bring in those subnational governments, the private sector leaders and others to strengthen the advocacy and campaigning efforts. So for next year, we'll be focusing on 4 key areas. So working with limited resources. So a lot of this is, dependent on what we can mobilize some additional capacity and finance to support. But yeah, working with the partner organizations that have existing capacity for media and comms and other pieces as well to build a national climate ambition narrative. And part of that is the Mission 2025 campaign work to mobilize those real economy leaders to be well prepared and confident advocates for science-aligned targets and national policy, and also through the sector working groups, convening meetings where possible with policymakers, Independent Climate Change Authority, department staffers and others to lead up to the election, but also prepare for post-election, no matter the outcome. How can we prepare to implement some ambitious national climate responses? So there'll also be some conversations with counterparts overseas to see, how the We Are Still in approach of maintaining ambition can work in practice. And we'll be looking for ways we can convene and coordinate so that we all can strengthen our individual efforts to be greater than the sum of our parts. So part of all of that will logically fall into shaping a credible Oceania COP31. So what does that look like in terms of bringing in the credible and positive influences across the Australian economy and society? So who are those alternative voices in place of the usual suspects of the fossil fuel sponsors and other voices we believe may not have the right things to say to put Australia and the world onto that 1.5 trajectory. So what that looks like in terms of the objectives. So we'll share this with you afterwards, and warmly welcome any thoughts, including on this call today. Feel free to raise your hand and chime in if you have any questions. But there's a bit of a media and comms piece, and there's a bit of a mobilizing piece, working with all of you to bring out those unusual suspects, particularly in the regional and trade exposed areas where we can highlight those success stories of what climate action looks like in practice, and those voices, like we had Ricardo from IKEA at the Mission 2025 launch event speaking to why national climate policy certainty is necessary for a resilient economy. And yeah, the usual messages that we all know, but that need to be repeated and raise awareness across different parts of Australia. And yeah, then there's some ambitious goals we're hoping to find some partners to work with, like working on. Sasha had the suggestion for a SME scorecard for the B Corp Climate Collective. So what the different policy platforms would mean for Australian businesses. So there's a few ideas like that which we're keen to build out if we manage to find some capacity to do that. So if any of this is sounding like a collaboration opportunity for anyone, please do reach out. And then many of you in the working groups, you'll likely give the updates in the sector rounds. But yeah, there's some other fun projects in the mix, like the multi-level governance built environment pilot, which I'm excited about how BFA can play a supporting role there. Yeah, so timeline, we've tried to break it down into 3 phases. So that's in a nutshell. And the COP 30 and 31 piece, we are looking for some global philanthropic support to try and prepare some of those real economy leaders that may not have the fossil fuel lobby funds to get to COP and be veterans in those spaces. So all those alternative industry voices or subnational voices that really could use some capacity building and confidence building to prepare and play a more powerful role in a COP31 space. And that includes working with partners in Brazil and across the Pacific Islands, and finding the peers and counterparts for Australian real economy leaders to start forming some partnerships and collaborations for some constructive dialogues through those forums. And some key moments to keep in mind, probably missing a few, but I mentioned at the start as well, just some things we'll be trying to mobilise and work around. So the February 10, my BFA colleagues are already a little bit anxious about that one for what we might be able to achieve, but we're hoping to raise some attention in national media and get some conversations kicked off around what Australia needs to be doing, and the fact that business leaders and councils and cities and others really know that we need to keep on this trajectory to decarbonise our economy as quickly as possible. And I will hand over to my colleagues, kick off with Jordan to also just share quickly with all of you what they're looking forward to next year in terms of working with all of you awesome people in the Better Futures community. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Good day, everyone. Look, 2024 has been a huge year, and reflecting on what we've achieved together and looking ahead, I see incredible opportunity for Better Futures and the community to lead the charge in assembling and or pulling together the community assembly for action across multiple sectors. And I think the critical role that non-state actors, namely businesses, local governments, and universities will play in raising the ambition and driving meaningful climate solutions can't be overstated as we prepare for a potential Oceania-hosted COP in 2026. Looking at COP29 this year in Baku, there were many challenges, of course, but it also underscored the opportunity for Australia to step up as a global leader. And we really want to see Australia as a nation driving that bold, inclusive climate action. So for me, I think really excited to work with everyone on this call and the broader BFA community to strengthen the partnerships that we need to amplify the diverse and unique voices and champion that Oceania-led solution for a transformative COP31 in 2026, wherever it may be held.
Thanks, Jordan. I'm going to throw to Quimby.
Thanks, Lisa. And hello, everyone. Like Lisa said, I hope everyone's looking forward to some nice time off soon. For me, yeah, I think a reflection on the year. I mean, for us as a team, the big item that stands out was the forum. And for me, with my first year with Better Futures Australia, just sort of being a part of sector working group meetings and seeing how you all work together and compare notes and collaborate has been really fascinating. And then at the forum, just getting that feeling of coming together and getting, a taste of what multi-sector collaboration can look like, and how powerful that can be. So the forum was a big, big, big moment. And then looking forward, Lisa touched on the Mission 2025 campaign, and I'm really looking forward to embracing that challenge of recruiting more business voices and getting their voices out there and seeing what cut through we can achieve and getting policymakers to hear those messages of support and act accordingly on stronger policy. See if we can make that happen in some small or maybe large way. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, Quimby and Kira.
Hi, everyone. Lovely to see all your faces and just, echoing what Jordan and Quimby have said, that the work that you've done and that you continue to do, sharing and being open in terms of your plans and strategy is really inspiring. But I think we definitely saw a very fractious world in 2024. And coming into 2025, that's a huge issue. And the work that BFA does is just making sure that, inclusiveness is really the key to our work, and that multi-sectoral collaboration is kind of more important than ever. And just being able to bring in those new voices and make sure that people feel heard is something that I enjoy doing and look forward to next year.
Thanks, guys. Jordan, Quimby, and Kira are all sticking around next year, but Quimby will be offline for January. Go-tos for the comms and partnerships piece, Quimby and Kira, and Jordan and I for everything else. So please do reach out if there's any ways we can collaborate and strengthen our collective advocacy efforts next year. And we now have H.Y. William Chan joining us. Thanks, William, for joining us, and sorry for chasing you. So those of you who don't know William, he's one of the Better Futures Australia champions who wears many hats, as all of you do. So he was in Baku at COP29 and participated in the Global Alliances for Climate Action Champ Fellowship. So I'll let William spell that out for all of you, and also did various other things with built environment add-on. So thanks for joining us, Will, and please do, excited to hear what your main takeouts were and where you see things heading for COP30.
Thanks so much, Lisa. Bujari, Gamarua, everyone. So obviously a very different COP this year in Baku compared to last year's in Dubai from city, local governments and built environments perspective. Last year we saw 400 city mayors all descend onto COP, the first time in the history of the climate negotiations where city leaders, mayors were invited to the negotiations table. This didn't happen this time round, although the local governments and city sector did continue to push our agenda for multi-level action through our constituency of LGMA and also with our city networks. So this year at COP, it was really the first time to have a major climate finance deal within 15 years. We've not seen any progress on or action in developing the financing of climate action until now. Although it was a disappointing outcome by many because it was deemed to be quite inadequate. In terms of cities and local governments, they had over 500 delegates still, and over 170 events. There was continued support for strong multi-level cooperation with commitments to continue between urban initiatives, starting from COP27 all the way to COP31. One of the big announcements coming out was the multi-sectoral action pathways known as MAP, which was for Resilience and Healthy Cities Declaration. So that was endorsed by 160 stakeholders, not to be confused by CHAMP, which still continues. CHAMP obviously has been signed up by member states, including Australia, and that's the Coalition for High Ambition for Multi-Level Partnerships. And so that work still continues at a local level, especially as local governments and other representatives continue to work through ALGA, the Australian Local Government Association, but also so that we can reach, and also through ICLEI, the International Local Climate Local Environmental Initiatives, Council for Local Environmental Initiatives, that we continue to speak to Minister Bowen and also the Australian government on localizing NDCs. The good news is that Brazil actually came out with a very ambitious NDC update that for the first time highlighted as an example of multi-level cooperation. So on day 3 of COP this year, Brazil submitted its updates and it highlighted how to scale up the role of local and other subnational governments, really putting these other levels of governments at the center and heart of its climate implementation and its goals. So basically, the NDC for Brazil now makes direct reference to all levels of governments working towards the CHAMP, as well as being a leader as Belém will be hosting COP next year. So we're seeing a lot of action in this regard in terms of that leadership, and hopefully we can continue advocating Australia to also incorporate local action and the local carbon emissions towards our Paris Agreement targets. More broadly, in terms of global governance of mayors, we saw the launch of the Global Heat Resilience Partnership, including more collaborations, the Keep Cool Heat Resilience collaboration with cities. And a new partnership was announced to expand global access to data for cities and local governments. There was also the expansion of the Global Covenant of Mayors Urban Transitions Missions to now over 100 cities by 2030, and the launch of the critical role that urban areas can play towards equitable, climate resilient futures. And then in the building sector, we saw the recognition of buildings for the first time in the UNFCCC negotiations, that buildings were actually recognized within the text, and the establishment of the Intergovernmental Council on Buildings and Climate to really accelerate near zero emissions under the Buildings Breakthrough Agenda. Next year, as we look ahead, we will have the reporting of national determined contributions, so for NDCs, and so local governments, municipalities, and cities will continue to engage in the design and preparation of that reporting for next year, as well as supporting last year's CHAMP initiative to have more increased town hall COPs and to connect local communities to climate emergency action and national climate plans. In terms of disappointments, the overall outcomes for COP were seen as lacking ambition and the need for more multi-level action. we saw what was agreed upon was required of financing 1.3 trillion US dollars by 2035. And that was really considered the floor rather than a ceiling. And it was disappointing to see that that wasn't met, even though there was a finance goal that was determined. There was no decision adopted for global stocktake in terms of GST, which was obviously a significant concern for stakeholders. And also, a final decision on adaptation goals and indicators lacked strong provisions for locally led targets. I want to stress and talk about loss and damage because it was great over the past year to have lobbied for this, but even on the ground with the ministers for climate in Australia, which saw in the second week of COP, Australia finally funding $50 million to the Loss and Damage Fund. This fund started last year in Dubai and saw many of the affluent countries and the biggest polluters actually contribute. And it's fantastic to see the Australian government, albeit a bit late, follow suit with other countries to show that credibility. This is in addition to what the Australian government is already funding within the Pacific in our with our neighbours, with the Pacific Resilience Facility, and also investing in terms of renewable energy access. Loss and Damage Fund will be fully operational in terms of access to the fund from next year. So that's something that shows credibility within our region, especially as we look towards hosting COP with the Pacific in 2026. Now, I want to caveat that with the fact that a lot of the loss and damage provisions that other nations have provided are actually loans. They're not just a provision of funds without any conditions. And because the funding is also completely voluntary, so not all countries have provided loss and damage funding, because in terms of how loss and damage had come up last year, the criteria is that it's based on cooperation and facilitation and does not involve in terms of actual liability or compensation to those who are facing the most impacts, which being small island states and developing countries. So sometimes it feels like we are moving in the right step in the right direction, but it's also two steps backwards for the Australian government because as we have as we know, for those following the International Court of Justice with Vanuatu, they have begun hearings 2 weeks ago to clarify climate change obligations. And unfortunately, the Australian government actually put in a submission to discourage the courts from ruling in favour of Vanuatu, from taking any court action to determine really what the legal consequences would be for states, for member states, if they fail to meet their obligations and commitments. So that's been very disappointing to see the Australian government still pursuing to host such a big international event and at the same time not supporting our neighbours, such as Vanuatu, especially also future generations, because that body of work with the UN International Court of Justice came from young university students in Port Vila. And I think that that is a body of work that I'm most interested in continuing to push and fight for. And I hope you can also join me next year so that we can actually have climate justice truly recognized and funded from our communities, especially from Australia, to build up that credibility, but also build up that movement in terms of climate actors really being genuine about a Pacific-led COP for 2026. Thanks, Lisa.
Thanks, William. And yeah, please, everyone, put any questions for William in the chat or raise your hand now. I did want to say that for COP30, they are still to appoint the COP president or the UN high-level champion for COP30. So there is a chance one of those two or both might be Indigenous representatives, which would be amazing for the First Nations initiatives and advocacy efforts. And The agenda is still taking shape, but it looks like it'll be 5 issues around the adaptation global goals and the finance piece of that, the climate finance roadmap, transition pieces. So, yeah, given that the NDCs are being localized, what does an NDC plus the fossil fuel phase out date look like? Given that for the Amazon, there's some great collaborative campaigns across the region on stopping fossil fuel extraction and deforestation and the synergies between the conventions and all the things. So yeah, and the other priorities, NDC and the deforestation and forestry piece. So yeah, those 5 issues will be the agenda. So I think it's a great chance for all of us to start reaching out and strengthening collaborations in the region. So I'm sure all of you have initiatives in train. So yeah, thank you so much, William. And yeah, it's great to see that the multi-level governance, multi-level action pieces are creating more acronyms and more initiatives for us all. And hopefully it'll deliver some better outcomes. Were there any questions for William before we push on for the sector priorities and updates? All right. I haven't managed to get the poll and quiz function in Zoom to work for us today, unfortunately. So I might need to follow up with all of you and hope that you take 2 minutes to respond to 2 questions before you log off for the year.
Well, we can actually do it now.
We can?
We've been able to come up with an alternative solution.
Awesome. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah.
Fear. So we'll put a link in the chat. So we've set up a Slido and we have a couple of questions. I'm just pulling up the link now. It's in the, hang on a second. There we go. So if you could all just click on that link. And we have 3 quick questions. The first question you should see is, over the past year, do you feel your advocacy capacity has improved through your involvement with BFA? On a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being yes, significantly, 1 being no, not at all. If you could make a selection. And then we'll step through to the next question. We'll just give it a moment. You can see results are coming in. It's secretive. It's all anonymous. But we can share the results at the end as well, if you like. Have to figure out how to do it, but I think might just be easier if I share my screen. So we can see 42% are saying yes significantly, 50% yes somewhat, and 8% neutral. So that's overall really positive. I think we can move to the next question, and that should change on your screen. So the next question is, what would be the most helpful option for improving your advocacy capacity in 2025? There's meetings, workshops, dialogues with policymakers, mentorship or peer support, access to relevant data research, advocacy assets, and networking opportunities. So we'll just give you a minute to make a selection there. And this will help inform our planning and preparation for
Can you only pick one of
the
them?
year ahead. Yes, just one option. Your most helpful.
It's all right, Imogen. We can chat about all the things you want to do. Yeah.
Just give it another minute or so. 38% are saying meetings, workshops, dialogues with policymakers, and close second is access to relevant data and research. So we might move to the last one. Thank you for that. So just throwing in a random one here. In one word, describe how you're feeling as we head into 2025. So we're seeing some positive words. We're seeing some other words. So tired is standing out, exhausted, nervous, concerned. Some of the positive ones are prepared, focusing on the positives. I'm a stubborn optimist when it comes to this sort of thing, but it has been a big year. So trepidation, uncertain, lost. Lost is an interesting one. You're in the right place. We can help you find your way.
You might find if you asked us after the break, it might be a bit different as well. Like it'd be interesting to see first thing after we've all had a break, whether so many tired, exhausted, are there. Because it doesn't, for me, it doesn't mean that I'm not also positive but it just means right now I'm, burned. So it would be an interesting thing to see what it's like after we've all had a bit of a rest.
I agree.
Yeah, we'll do
totally.
a rematch on the Q1 February 2025.
Yeah. And I think it's even more impressive feeling this way that you're all here on the call today, the last week before holidays. So thank you for that. I'll stop the screen share and hand it back to Lisa. Thank you all for sharing your thoughts.
Yeah, thanks everyone. And yeah, really wishing you all some peaceful, rejuvenating, and hopefully some fun adventures over a bit of a break surrounded by loved ones. So now we'll jump to the round of the sector working group updates. So I'll throw to Imogen and Scott to kick us off with the local gov updates. I know that Cara was planning to chime in, but hopefully between the two of you, oh, and Sharon, you're still there. So yeah, any upcoming priorities or exciting projects on the horizon and opportunities for people across sectors to collaborate and strengthen our advocacy efforts heading into 2025. Been a big year for the local gov working group, and yeah, excited to hear
Thanks,
from you
Lisa.
guys.
I'll kick that off and then hand on to Scott as well. So yeah, it has been a really big year for us. We've produced quite a lot of work and done quite a lot of advocacy engagement. So probably the landmark piece of work in that space was the 2024 local government climate review. So that was launched in September at the Better Futures Forum, and a big thanks to the BFA team for providing that platform to put that work out there and engage with federal government ministers and other key players in the space, including ALGA. So that report looks at actions that local government are taking and will continue to take, are looking to take across all sectors. So transport, built environment, energy, land use and ag, and waste, the whole hog. And it also looks at their work at the corporate scale, so at what councils are directly responsible for and also what they can achieve in their community. There's some interesting stats that come out of there that kind of tie into the CHAMP advocacy and the NDC work. So collectively, the targets that councils are setting across their community would add up to about 30% of Australia's NDCs, so a really significant proportion. But that's not currently counted in the way that the Australian government looks at the nationally determined contributions. So we've done some work with the Climate Change Authority and other federal departments to advocate for that counting. There's also some stats around about 90% of the councils who responded to the survey, which is about 110 councils Australia-wide, which is about 20% of councils in the country, which is quite a good response to a voluntary survey. So 90% of those are active in the corporate space and have set targets towards their own corporate emissions, and about 70% have set targets in the community-wide space. We've also done some analysis around the actions that councils can take in the community, which show that they can directly influence about 15% of community-wide emissions. And there's some other reports in the UK that actually suggest it's up to 80% of advocacy, but the UK has a more direct governance role in local councils. So there's a big opportunity for local government to influence their community and take strong action on climate. We also found the introduction of Scope 3 reporting across the business community has kicked off a lot of interest, and there is a lot of opportunity to engage with businesses around both procurement and measuring of Scope 3 reporting in the supply chain. I notice there's only 25 seconds left. That's quite tight. So I might throw to Scott to talk to the built environment and multi-level governance partnerships, which are also kicking off.
Thanks, Imogen. So yeah, it's picking up from William Chan's discussion around CHAMP and MLG, the conversation around how to implement, I guess, is being led on two fronts. So firstly by our friends at ICLEI, who have been convening a sort of a coalition of willing elected representatives from right across the country on how they can have a sort of more coordinated dialogue with our friends in the federal government. And at the same time, other discussions have been taking place on the back of some of those meetings that Imogen just mentioned around how we account for voluntary and other actions taken by councils and others in our NDCs. Part of that conversation with DECU and CCA was around the role of multi-level governance in enabling that to happen. So we've had a follow-up meeting with a number of stakeholders across various departments at the back end of November around what that might look like. And we tried to narrow the scope around one of the sectoral plans under the net zero plan, just to try and make it not so broad and unwielding, with the risk of just being a complete talk fest and a bunch of policy wonks not getting anything done. So it was not just about what needs to be done, but how we actually roll up the sleeves and work together on stuff. So that was an interesting discussion. There's been a follow-up scheduled for tomorrow with other representatives from other government working groups, including decarbonisation working group and trajectory for low emissions buildings. So it's an ongoing discussion. I don't think to be a quick one, but at least it's happening, and there's a lot of goodwill around the table from those involved so far. So I'll wrap it there, I think, from the local government work.
Yeah, thanks, Imogen. Thanks, Scott. And Sharon, did you want to add anything from the ICLEI side, or?
I think the two have extensively covered my points. Thank you very much.
Excellent. Yeah, we'll have a busy year ahead and excited to keep working with all of the awesome local gov organisations. And yeah, with the Mission 2025 campaign too, we're keen to connect in as many councillors and mayors to add their voice to that. So if anybody has some friends in the space, please do connect them in, and hopefully they can join for the other collaborations too. Thanks, Rachel. All right, so I will throw to, if you need to leave immediately, Rachel, unless there was anything you wanted to share quickly before you jump off.
Well, it's been great to be part of the NBS working group, and I think, we have explored a little bit about protecting nature in the renewables transition in landscapes as well this year, which has been really good. I did just want to flag, that we've got the research going that I presented to our working group last week on integrating spatial mapping with participatory processes for decision making around the renewables transition. And our working group is going to explore a little possible collaboration, for some case studies on how to do that well. But I'd be very happy to present or bring along our team members to present some of that in the new year, if that's helpful. But otherwise, thanks for a big year, everyone, and I'll see you in the new year.
Thanks, Rachel. Have a wonderful break. All right, I'll jump to Monica to give an update with the corporate finance perspectives. Or you need to jump off. Thanks for
Hi,
joining us, Monica.
everybody. Yes, thank you. So I've just typed into the chat sort of updates WWF, which I'll send in a moment. So ASFI, we put a submission into ASFI on the climate taxonomy with a bigger focus on the agriculture piece, but also noting that, do no significant harm is really not good enough to capture that climate and nature nexus coming together. So we're going to try and put more thought into how do we actually accelerate and bring those two topics together. WWF is also doing a lot of work around NDC advocacy and work around the green iron corridor as part of our green steel work into Asia. So we've got a COP31 focus on that, obviously, some work around embedded emissions and accounting, government investment in common user infrastructure and that public-private partnership, as well as how do we create the demand side focus for a larger offtake agreement and collaboration. We've also got a piece of work around regenerative economy and what kind of those interventions at the business end would be like. So that's kind of WWF. With my MECLA hat, really interested to hear about the local government. So we have a local government subgroup under the demand side. I know there's quite a bit of interest in local councils being able to think about how they procure low carbon materials for their civil and linear infrastructure. And I'd love to have a conversation, Scott or whoever's the right person in the local council's working group. Because I think Eleanor Gibson, who's the new ALGA contact, got a meeting in January to start talking about that in more detail. So it'd be great to have a catch up there. And just lots of practical events and meetings within the MECLA working groups. We'll have an event in Melbourne trying to showcase some good work that's happening in the first quarter and a lot of online events. And I wanted to say something about mandatory reporting because I think it's a really important step in the right direction. We've had a few people talk about it. We held an event, a MECLA event, a couple of weeks ago on mandatory reporting for the built environment, and really we really need to be thinking about how to support the small to medium businesses to upskill and be able to respond. It's not for us to solve, but I think we need to find ways to help the community, help business people to respond there with the potential that, if another flavour of government gets in, they could potentially, roll some of those expectations back. So I think it would be smart for us to be thinking about how do we actually help to support them to do that. Anyway, I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. And the corporate finance working group with Tom from Climate Works Centre, who's already one of the lucky ones to switch off for the year, will be running a workshop in late January on what credible means in corporate transition planning. So just to get everybody on the same page around some language testing and some messages that we can incorporate and build into the work that we do for engaging Australia's business community. And the piece you raised, Monica, around building those support networks to increase the confidence and capacity of businesses to deliver on the global mandates, I think is really key in the context of not knowing which way things will go post-May. So yes, let's let's do all we can to support that community. And Mel, I hate to put you on the spot, but haven't seen you in a while. I just wanted to check in if there's anything you wanted to add from the work that you're doing in the corporate and finance spaces.
Yes, so thanks. And yeah, sorry, I've been not able to be as present in the meetings and things over the past year. I've been, as you know, doing the consultation with the Business Deans Council, and that came to a little bit of a peak at the end of this year. So that relationship has been about bedding down a relationship between the business schools and through the United Nations Principles of Responsible Management Education, particularly focused on what is the skills and capabilities gaps for business schools across the board in preparing for the transition, and particularly focused on net zero. So we just did a little bit of a consultation with various different peaks to ask them what they think is needed. And that was then presented back to the Dean's Council. Was that at the end of November? I think at the end of November. And then subsequently with the PRME process, we've been developing what they call a chapter statement, which is their main way of helping their members across the business schools implement different principal initiatives. And so they've been developing a draft chapter statement around climate capabilities to prepare business graduates, which goes across education, research, and also decarbonising our own practices. That went also then in early December to their local chapter meeting, and is at the stage of being endorsed, which means it will then go up via the UN GC, and if approved, then it will come back down via the PRME to all the different business schools, hopefully next year, which would be fantastic. The Deans would like to make public a report and a statement at the beginning of next year in March. That process is still open for consultation, so if there's anyone who would like to give feedback and input into that discussion on what they think business schools should be doing to prepare graduates for the net zero transition, I'd be very happy to hear from people still at this stage. Thanks for the chance for an update, and I'm sorry I haven't been involved in meetings.
Yeah, thanks, Mel. If there's a link for that, that would be excellent to share in the chat. And I did also want to share that there's currently a call out for nominees to the ISO standards body. So we've heard feedback just within our corporate finance working group that the current representatives from our part of the world on that global body are quite conservative relative to people from other parts of the world. So yeah, it might be a good opportunity to put forward some NGOs or think tanks to boost Australia's ambition in those global standard spaces. So yeah, if you want to have a chat about that, there's Monica and Mel on the call that know a lot more about it than me. And I'll put the link in the chat so you have a better sense of what it's all about and can share it with your networks. So thank you, Monica and Mel. And there's also ambition among the corporate finance working group to put together a bit of a COP31 strategy about bringing in the positive voices across private sector leaders to play a positive role and try and swap out the fossil fuel interests in those spaces. So we'll be working on that next year as well. So I will throw next to let's see, Jill on the call. So potentially Tracy and nature-based solutions and land use update. Thanks, Tracy.
Oh, no problem. Hi, everybody. So as Monica quite rightly pointed out just before, nature and climate need to be much more, they need to be spoken about in the same breath. Obviously, you know, I don't think I'm preaching to the converted here on that. We know that this is something that needs to be front and centered a lot more. So next year, I will keep it really brief, but we have been talking a lot about collaboration with the various members of the NBS group on use cases, as Rachel mentioned just before she left as well. That's one of the potential use cases where we'll be looking at the different organisations in the NBS group and the slightly different spaces that we work in coming together. I saw before that Doug is on the call. Hi, Doug. He's another one of the organisations that we might be working with. Sarah Hoyle's on the call, another one of the organisations that are potentially all pulling in together. So we're looking at seeing how some of the data and information that some of the organisations like ClimateWorks has can be put to use for some of the other organisations who have much more ties into regional communities like NRM regions, like the Next Economy. Wentworth Group of Concerned Scientists have different data that they can provide. We're trying to explore ways early next year for different use cases where we can pull those resources and do some kind of proof of concept of how these things might feed from so the national and international targets, the 1.5 degree aligned, no new extinctions, biodiversity COP, all those kinds of things, how we can pull those international and national targets together and have regional planning processes actually reflecting those targets, whether that's possible, what that might look like, how that looks different to each region, and where, say, some of the inequities that might be required for funding down the track might be addressed, where there will be some areas that have a lot of potential land use change and others that might not so much. And as Rachel mentioned, renewable energy is one of those areas, but all land use change is those areas too. So some genuine, actual, real collaboration happening. And coming up, there'll be even more in the early part of next year. So that's the stuff that I'm most excited about. I don't know if anybody else on the call, Stuart, wants to talk about some of the other things, or Doug. Yeah,
thanks, Tracy. And I'll just throw out there too for the land use piece. Kira and I went along to a green data centers proposal.
Oh, yeah.
Which was quite terrifying. So I think it's going to be, a big play with the uptick of AI globally and the conversations about exporting data to California, Silicon Valley, and all the things. Yeah. But Stuart, Doug?
I'll just jump in quickly. We still haven't given up hope that pre-election there might be a deal between Labor and the Greens on the reform of the nature positive bills, particularly around removal of the regional forest agreement exemption and some greater commitment to funding to look at land clearing. On the upside, there's progress towards one of the large universities to developing a national vegetation monitoring program that we've been involved in. So that's quite exciting. And I guess lastly, there's greater awareness of some of the bigger beef industry actors and supply chains that a deforestation-free definition of beef and supply chain traceability is going to happen, driven by the European deforestation regulation. So that's quite exciting. It always is slower than we like, but that really is long, difficult, hard yards and, in sort of often unfriendly territory. But we're in there having discussions, so I'm happy about that.
Yeah, that's very exciting that that's progressing finally. Thanks, Stuart. Doug, any additions to that?
Thanks, Lisa. Thanks, Tracy. I don't have any updates. I just want to say hello. My name's Doug. I work with the Next Economy. And I guess looking forward to next year. Yeah, we are starting to do some of the place-based work and starting to go a bit deeper in southwest New South Wales in terms of the intersection of renewable agriculture and land use change and decarbonisation. So we're still in the throes of planning what that looks like, but as Tracy kind of alluded to, we're having some exciting. There's lots of interest, and so how we take that forward and demonstrate some really cool things is what we're looking forward to next year. Hello, group. And
hi, Doug. Welcome. We love the Next Economy in the BFA community, so it's good to see another friendly face from the team. And I will throw to health, the health sector reps on the call to give an update, and then we'll go to transport. So we've got Michelle and Ray, and Kevin's dropped off. But yeah, Michelle and Ray, do you want to chime in?
I'll jump in, Ray, but I'm sure you can give some more detail. I've been around since mid-year. Climate and Health Alliance CEO Michelle Isles. We have about 100 members focused on climate and health. This group that I see is those organisations that are sort of at the forefront of campaigning and policy discussion. So it's been great to meet regularly. Participate and ensure there's representation of the health message and agenda in events such as the forum. Because what I've found coming into this space specifically is that we have the health evidence, we have this available, but it's not necessarily cutting through or being on the table as much. So just to be able to bring health voices and perspectives has been part of our agenda to have that representation. It doesn't feel like the year's slowing down, just to say. It's this week I'm still meeting politicians and commissioning evidence to get health economic data into some of the conversations and modelling, particularly if we're having an early election. So I think this group will need to come back and really might need to ramp up our strategy, but there are some defined positions. I would say even with the announcement, the gas expansion in WA, the group has talked about it being really clear we need to have health impact assessments in approval and development of projects and policies, and that's something where we've got some position papers on, but need to land that. And that is in addition to environmental impact assessments. So really being able to bring that health evidence that we have to the table to inform decision making both at state and federal levels. I might throw to Ray if you wanted to throw in some detail.
Thanks so much, Michelle. Echoing Michelle's, the year is not slowing down at all for us here at Healthy Futures. It's been a very busy year, 2024, and 2025 will continue in that same vein. We're in particularly working in the methane space. It's specifically about the NDCs and how important methane abatement is. We're also, for many of you who might know this project, working on an all-electric healthy hospitals campaign where we are petitioning for all new hospitals to be built all electric and for the retrofit of 9 specific pilot hospitals to be retrofitted as all electric. These campaigns, in particular the Healthy Hospitals campaign, has gotten quite a bit of traction. And one way that I think that all of you could really help is if that you have any healthcare workers that are in your networks. We are currently collecting stories of healthcare workers who are dealing with climate disasters in their own lives, but also at work, because it's really interesting to hear these stories of healthcare workers who are on the front lines in their hospitals dealing with climate disasters of all varieties, and then they go home to their own climate disaster stories, personal stories, right? So you're working on the job, but also dealing with it in your personal life. We're collecting those stories. Right now we're doing a campaign. Let me drop that in. So if you could share that really widely, that would be absolutely stunning, and we would love you for it. And I think that those are to keep it brief, because I do see that in the quiz that we all just took that tired and overwhelmed are the 2 keywords. So to keep it very brief, that's pretty much the main priorities for 2024. Thank you, or 2025. Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, and thanks, Ray, for all the awesome work happening among the health leaders in the climate advocacy community. And I do, Ray, I want to just chime in and ask if you're happy to introduce yourself through the Youth Climate Policy Centre networks, because I feel like youth voices are really powerful additions to many of the campaigns. And yeah, Ray reached out following our launch of Mission 2025 in Sydney. So yeah, thanks for joining us, Ray. Just a quick intro and what your organisation's all about and how you'd like to collaborate.
Sure, fair enough too, because we're fairly new to the BFA space as well. So hi everyone, my name is Ray Nalpick, and I lead the fundraising and digital campaigning space for Healthy Futures. We are specifically a not-for-profit organization that works with healthcare workers who are on the front lines and are worried about climate change. So we actually or led by healthcare workers. We take their climate stories and we take their issues and bring them to the forefront. So we specifically work on the issues that healthcare workers, which, as you know, are Australia's largest and most trusted trusted workforce. We're taking their issues to the forefront, raising their voices, and this is a cohort of people who are extremely passionate about the climate space, but are very often incredibly informed, but are incredibly time poor. So bringing their concerns to these conversations is so incredibly important. Cheers.
Yeah, thanks, Ray. And Ray from YCPC too.
Sure, thanks, Lisa. Lots of Rays on the call. So, I'm the Executive Director of the Youth Climate Policy Centre. So we're working with young people who are leading organisations that are sort of adjacent to climate change, not necessarily directly involved, although some of them are. So a lot of them are, student groups at universities, and there's a few community groups. Some of them are, engineers working, learning about renewable energy. Some of them are science, environmental science students who are interested in biodiversity, and there's groups where people get together and just go for bushwalks, and they're really passionate about biodiversity from that kind of point of view. And so, what we're trying to do is bring those voices who aren't typically politically engaged but have an interest in politics in that way, and they're affected by it, and giving them an avenue to, I suppose, advocate for their own values. And the things that they're working on in the political space. So connecting them to decision makers, I suppose, not just in politics, but also in industry as well. We're putting together a team at the moment, and we've got big plans. Particularly, one of the most of what we'll be doing is writing submissions to government consultations and parliamentary inquiries and things like that. So if there are also any other campaigns that anyone on the call is running and they're interested in getting some youth voices involved in those campaigns, we can run surveys of our members, and we can provide some quotes, some lived experience quotes and things like that. And also open to any other kinds of forms of advocacy you think it would be useful to get us involved on.
Excellent. Thanks, Ray. And yeah, we'll definitely be chasing you and fellow youth networks to connect in more voices for the Mission 2025 campaign. We had a youth councillor for local gov make a recorded statement at the Mission 2025 launch. So yeah, all these young overachievers that have a really powerful message to share. So yeah, thank you for all you're doing, and yeah, thank you for being so generous and opening up that invitation to all of these awesome campaigners and advocates and organizations to work with you. Kevin, did you have anything to add from the health sector at AHA?
Well, sorry, my name is Kevin. I'm from the Australian Healthcare Hospitals Association. So it's just for next year, the AHA's research arm, the Deeble Institute, has the scholarship program. So whilst finalizing the applicants, we have an applicant who will be formulating a health policy brief on environment and its impact on the healthcare sector. So I would keep everyone here up to date as to how the policy brief is going about and what its outcomes are aimed at. But if you would like to be interested in it, please let me know. And
Excellent. Yeah, very excited to see who the candidate is working on the climate focused one. Thanks, Kevin. And I'll throw to Jordan to give an update on behalf of the Transport Working Group that couldn't join us today too. Thanks, Jordan.
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Great to hear all the updates from all the other working groups. And the Transport Working Group has been very busy this year. They send their apologies for today. There's lots of things going on the last week before everyone breaks. But we met last week. We had our last meeting of the year and workshopped a brief update. So I'm happy to pass that on. The group this year kicked some massive goals, particularly around the new vehicle efficiency standards, the NEVs, seeing that translate through into active policy and legislation. So that's sort of the main focus. The group has looked to complementing the work done there in other areas. So there's some ongoing submissions and reviews around the design standards. There's a submission closing 5th of Feb around Rule 81, and there's also some harmonisation standard reviews, particularly around emission controls, and that's closing on the 24th of Jan. So we'll be putting organisations on the working group will be putting together some submissions for that. South Australia has also launched or just closed its consultation on its 30-year transport strategy. So some submissions were made on that to try and inform the state's priorities. And pre-budget submissions for the new year will be the focus when everyone comes back after the break. The other focus for the group, we've had some positive feedback around how active transport has been a key piece of the conversation. It's helped to increase awareness amongst some of the member groups around its importance for decarbonising the sector. So it was really good to hear that it's just being involved in the working group is helping to enhance their work. And because of that really intensive period that the group undertook around the needs and I guess the broad focus of a lot of the member orgs will be getting together in late January for a bit of a strategy planning workshop to look at how the group's been operating and what the priorities are for the members for the year ahead, and putting together a bit of an advocacy plan, seeing how that aligns to BFA's priorities and the other sectors as well. So if anyone on this call is working adjacent or in the transport sector, feel free to reach out. They're a very interesting group to work with, and happy to add you to the list as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jordan. And yeah, thanks for the prompt. I almost forgot. All of you on the sector working group Google list should already have this. So yeah, it would be incredibly appreciated and helpful if any of you are online before the 24th of January to make your contributions to the shared BFA pre-budget submission. So we have heard feedback from the DQ team and others that it is a helpful process for us to go through to help them prioritise which recommendations they bump up on the pile if they see the broad coalition supporting and referencing others' proposals. So it isn't a waste of time. So please do add your contributions, and even if it's just sharing a link to your draft submission, and we can make sure we give it a reference and show that there's broad support out there for these proposals. And for anyone thinking about making a submission, they are due by the 31st. So please do get those in. I think that's all of the sector representative updates. I did notice Daoud was on the call briefly, but he's dropped off. But yeah, any comments, questions, reflections on anything anyone's heard, any opportunities that you see following the updates for BFA's focus heading into 2025? Putting it out there to the group.
I think just to say that, Ray talked about some of the health systems specific advocacy, but that a lot of our work can complement and support, a lot of the other areas. So we've done a lot of work in healthy transport and, land use, and thinking about the power and evidence base of nature and health and well-being, and so that, health can support many of the other areas.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle. And yeah, Heather
sorry, if you have any reports or anything to share, I'm pretty sure the group would love to see that. So happy to forward it on. Thanks, Michelle.
All right. So I think that's everything that we want to share in terms of sector working group updates, and we've shared the BFA plans for next year with all of you. I'll follow up and attach that as a PDF to the email. And yeah, we warmly welcome your reactions. And if you see any opportunities to collaborate, any events you're planning or campaigns you're running that are very complementary and aligned, we'll see how we can mobilize some more support behind those. And beyond that, I have incrementally been updating the recurring monthly or bi-monthly working group meetings that should be in your calendars. If you aren't on those and you would like to be, please reach out to us and we'll add you onto those Google groups and share the group terms of reference with you. And we'll set the first quarterly roundtable for late February next year, hopefully when everybody's back from their well-deserved breaks and we can all get into the groove for some impactful work and meaningful advocacy efforts in the lead up to some really critical moments in the first half of the year. So I think, yeah, link to the pre-budget submission in the chat. That's the early next year priority where we'd love all of your support. And I'll just quickly throw to my colleague Kira to just provide some clear steps for all of you to help out with the Mission 2025 campaign over the summer break too. We'd really value your support there. Thanks, Kira.
Yes, hi again, everyone. So yeah, we had a really successful launch for Mission 2025 and lots of interest. And I think we've got a few new voices on the call today because of the launch. So what we're asking and what plans we have for next year are kind of bubbling up in the background. But at the moment, we're asking business, industry, city, state voices and leaders to share their message that aligns with the Mission 2025 campaign, which is to support bold, science-aligned national climate plans, because we have the deadline for NDCs coming up very quickly in February 10th next year. So the idea isn't to push too hard for a statement, which probably won't be delivered on Feb 10th from Australia, but to support the next term of government to make bold climate policies and targets. So we would love if you could share this campaign with your networks. Obviously, we'd love to reach outside of our current network and include new business industry voices. So we had IKEA give a statement, and we had Bank Australia and others come on board and share their kind of commitment to Mission 2025. So really hoping to get some, bold statements that we can gather, and then we're hoping to launch that at a media event on February 10th next year. So if you can share with your networks, I've just shared the page here, which gives you a messaging pack, which will give you kind of details about what we're looking for in terms of messaging. So you can have a look through that if you or your organization want to submit a statement. And then there's very clear guidelines to upload your message, and we'll be collecting those for the February 10th launch media event. We've also got some social media squares which you can share that are linked to that messaging pack. But yeah, very exciting to get some new voices in, and there's lots of momentum and interest from investor groups, business groups. So we'd love to spread the word.
Yeah, thanks, Kira. And I know that a lot of you are doing some great work in some of the marginal and emissions intensive seats out there that play a key role in the climate agenda and the transition to a low carbon and resilient economy. So there might be opportunities, say, for instance, Ray, if you had some youth voices in some of those areas that are also wearing hats as councillors or small business owners or have some other agency behind them. And Doug, with all the great work that the Next Economy is doing, you probably have some good insights to who those brave voices out there that would be willing to make a little recording and support policy certainty and science-aligned targets and action, and that our future economy and jobs depend on it. So if anybody has any ideas and connections, and Mel through definitely the business teams and Climate Leaders Coalition connections, we'd love to see who we might be able to work with there. And I just noticed that Wei Su has just started a new role with AGL, so I'll be chasing her. But yeah, any voices out there that you think there might be a lead. And Stu, obviously, WWF has a lot of great contacts, so please do share any ideas you have, and we'll see how many voices we can get. And then with February 10, we'll be hoping to lean on the partners that have good connections to journalists. So I've been texting Adam Morton from The Guardian, but yeah, we'd love to get some more conservative media outlets in the mix as well to reach Middle Australia. So we had Marion Ray from AAP at the Better Futures Forum that did an awesome job. But yeah, similarly, if there's any journalists out there that you think will respond to the media hook of, the UN NDC deadline and the world is watching, and Australia's put the hat in the ring to co-host COP31 with our Pacific Island neighbours. So yeah, what's that mean, and what does the target need to deliver post-election to put us onto that credible national climate plan? So yeah, just leave that all with you, and maybe take it into your Christmas lunch conversations or whatever backyard cricket games and things you might find yourselves doing. And I'll definitely not mention it with my dad. So yeah, he'll just repeat Sky News at me. So but yes, we'll leave you all with that, and yeah, hopefully we can really draw out some really positive stories and some inspiring voices, and really do all we can to normalise keeping Australia on track and a positive contributor under the Paris Climate Agreement. So yeah, huge shout out to all of you for all the awesome work you continue to do every day, and I really do wish you all a very relaxing and rejuvenating break, because we really do need you to come back next year and continue this work with us. It's a really critical year. And I'll leave you with a quote from Christiana Figueres, given that we're jumping on board with the Global Optimism and Women Business Coalition Mission 2025 campaign. Optimism is not the result of success. It is the necessary input to meet the challenges ahead. So choose stubborn optimism as we step into the new year. So yeah, please do take time to reflect and pat yourselves on the back. It's been a great year, and we'll keep up the good collaborative efforts. And yeah, really appreciate all of your collaborative spirits and attitudes, and continuing to show up. And we will hopefully continue to be greater than the sum of our parts. So yeah, thank you all. Stay safe, and look forward to seeing you in the new year.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you.